Centuries ago, a depraved Roman emperor stole a teenage boy's name and forced him to accept another. Well, it wasn't the only thing he was forced to accept. There was also the title he'd never wanted. Before we can understand that boy's story, we've got to talk about that emperor. An emperor called Nero. He's remembered as one of history's cruelest and most sadistic leaders. Yeah, so this one's starting out fun, isn't it? Nero had a lot of disgusting interests. He also declared himself a demigod. Because why wouldn't he? I mean, there's the time he had a physical affair with his own mother, a woman called Agrippina. Alas for her, Nero was never a one woman or one man. And another woman caught his eye, a woman called Poppaea Sabina. Well, Mom wasn't quiet about not liking Sabina. So, in 59 CE, Nero unalived his own dear mama. What a relief to get rid of her pesky little voice. I mean, he was an emperor after all, with unlimited power. Just to drive home how fucked up Nero was, he was known for abusing freeborn boys and seducing married women. He'd also been accused of raping a Vestal virgin. Think none, but treated with more reverence. Well, to do that was considered a severe taboo. Oh, but guess what? She would have been punished by live burial. See, kids, victim blaming's been around for centuries. Anyway, Nero eventually married Sabina. And 3 years later, she was very pregnant. Nero would have an heir. Yay! Except, as I previously established, Nero wasn't exactly mentally stable. So when Sabina disobeyed him, or maybe questioned him, or hell, maybe she just looked at him wrong, he kicked her repeatedly, including her very pregnant belly, until she wasn't breathing anymore. And Nero had rid himself of yet another pesky little voice. Or two. But see, historians have speculated that on some fucked up level, Nero may have actually cared about Sabina and may have regretted his harsh actions. And this, kids, is when that teenage boy's name was stolen, along with whatever else Nero determined he wanted. So, everything. Sources say Sporus was uncommonly beautiful. Beyond that, there's very little known about his life beyond the cruelty he endured at Nero's hand. But contemporary evidence seems to indicate he was born around 49 CE and was probably a commodity, forced into service based on his social status, if you catch my meaning. Some sources said he was actually the son of a freedman. That's someone who's been freed by their owner. Freeborn men weren't supposed to be on the menu any more than a Vestal virgin. But hey, emperor. He got to make up the rules along the way and change any inconvenient ones. Remember I said he may have cared about Sabina? Yeah, I call bullshit. Story after story reiterates how Nero was soulless, sick and twisted, too drunk on power to give a fuck about anybody but himself. Just like every other cockbag who thinks he owns the world. Sound familiar? Anyway, unfortunately for Sporus, contemporary reports say he bore an uncanny resemblance to Sabina. And Nero, yeah, he really liked that. I mean, who doesn't want the chance to relive all of their favorite, most disgusting fantasies? So Nero called for Sporus and promptly ordered him castrated without asking Sporus first. I know, you're shocked that he didn't care what Sporus wanted. Okay, just in case you don't know what castration actually is, a dude's ballage is removed. He gets to keep his peener, but he's completely emasculated. He can still feel arousal and participate in happy fun naked time, but he can't have kids. It was a disgustingly common practice at the time, often to preserve a boy's youthful qualities and to allow an emperor to indulge himself. So Sporus forcibly castrated. Do you really think Nero stopped there? Yeah, no. In 67 CE, Nero married Sporus. Lucky him, am I right? In public, Nero called Sporus wife, forced him to wear the costume of an empress, kissed him in public anytime he could, further emasculating him. Oh, and of course he used Sporus in the bedroom, too. He may not have been doing it just to get off. See, because back in ancient Rome, sex was used as a weapon, too. Yeah, I know that's so different now. Anyway, it was a way to show power and force. So basically, Sporus may have been an empress, but even behind closed doors, he wasn't allowed dignity or choice. But why would Nero do any of that? Well, besides being sick and twisted. Well, Sabina, remember her? Nero kicking. Anyway, again, she had convinced Nero she was descended from another emperor. That made her appealing as a wife. Double claim to the throne and all. But it was also terrifying for Nero. If she was born of regal blood, somebody from her line could try to take over. And since Sporus looked so much like Sabina, Nero probably thought they were related. And if they were, it made Sporus another threat. Sexually humiliating him, treating him like a woman, mutilating him. Sporus would never be taken seriously. Plus, no kids, because no ballage. So in 68 CE, Nero was doing whatever the fuck to welcome the new year. And Sporus gave him a gift. A gift that seems kind of like a premonition. It was a ring depicting, in a nutshell, that whole thing was when the Roman god Pluto kidnapped the goddess Proserpina and forced her into the underworld, where she was used repeatedly against her will. Her dad found out and made a deal with Pluto, and she was the lucky recipient of 2 trips a year. 6 months in the underground, 6 months topside. That's how the seasons change, according to ancient Romans. Nobody ever asked her if she was interested in travel. See, kids, women have been treated like property for centuries, and we just keep on taking it. Anyway, you might have heard the Greek version of that story, a woman called Persephone. Some historians have speculated Sporus deliberately gifted the ring to Nero to unnerve him. A bad omen. A tiny rebellion against Nero's cruelty. Okay, back to Nero and his horse shit. You probably should have guessed he was a failure as a leader. And the Roman people were fed up. He ended up having to run because the Roman Senate labeled him an enemy of the state. Took him fucking long enough. Sporus was one of only 4 people in Nero's entourage when he left. Some say Sporus went willingly, since he had no way of knowing how he would be treated by another person. I am inclined to believe that it was instead another time when Sporus was not given a choice. So Nero saw the writing on the wall, which wouldn't have been difficult since the Senate ordered his execution. So Nero decided to deprive them of that and drove a dagger through his own neck. You know, instead of being held accountable. There is no way in hell that you're surprised about that. Sporus's life did not improve once Nero was no more. In fact, it got worse. He was passed around to and used by different men of power. Well, until the age of 20, when he landed with one Emperor Vitellius. That absolute pile of donkey shit decided that Sporus should become a part of a gladiatorial spectacle. Spectators would have the unparalleled opportunity to watch a live reenactment of, and Sporus would have the honor of playing the lead, being publicly, repeatedly, and violently used before being unalived for entertainment. Rather than submitting to yet another humiliation, Sporus took his own life in 69 CE, probably seeking the dignity he'd been denied for his entire short life, probably the only choice he'd ever been able to make. He was only 20. Yeah, but Sporus' humiliation didn't end with his passing. His actual name has been lost to time. And the name that Nero insisted on giving him, yeah, it was basically just an insult. A funny for Nero. Historians have indicated that Sporus is some form of the word sperm. You know, Nero thought that was funny to call him what he'd been denied the opportunity to make. Isn't that great? So because of a depraved emperor, history has remembered only an insult, reducing that boy to nothing more than a castrated empress.